Hey everybody, welcome to or back to my channel, My Kind of Stuff, and today is my September reading wrap-up. If you've been following my channel, you know that this month was Romance Readathon 2024, which was Phantom of the Opera themed, hosted by Maggie from Maggie's Books and Stuff. Because I am a Patreon of hers, I got to be one of the Phantoms this month, so it was so much fun causing absolute chaos and mayhem over in the Discord. So thank you, Maggie, for letting me participate. And because it was a readathon month, I think I read like 20 books. I did pretty good. For September, I also played my TBR game. So let's start with those books first. The first book that my TBR game gave me was a standalone, so I read Cold Storage. I'm actually buddy reading this one with Jenny, so you can see we've both been reading, tabbing, annotating. My tabs don't really show up in this light, but they are there. They're just very light colored tabs. I am giving this one 4 stars. I actually have a tiny bit to go. I only have like 25%, so it's like I want to say like 70 pages left to read, but I still have 2 days in the month, so I'm definitely going to get those done before the month is up. This one was a lot of fun. It is about a like mutative organism that is a biohazard, and they hide it underground because it will eradicate everything if it gets out. And of course, these security guards bumble around and accidentally let it escape. So, yeah, this one was really cool. The only reason it's getting a 4 and not a 5 from me is because there was a lot of scientific terms, and at times it made me feel really stupid. I didn't need to know the scientific terms to enjoy the story. So, like, the fact that I didn't know what all of them meant didn't ruin the story at all. It just made me feel a little dumb sometimes. The next prompt from my TBR game was actually landed on a Kiss of Death space, so I had to spin a spinner wheel of all of my active series and read the next book in the series that it picked. So the spinner wheel chose the Undeniable series. So I read book 2 in that series, and that was Unbeautifully by Madeline Sheehan. I liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is a motorcycle club romance, and each book follows a different couple, but you see all the couples in every story. Uh, this one had a lot of like grief and trauma that both characters had to come kind of like overcome in order to come together. And it was actually a lot more sad and heartbreaking than the first book. I mean, obviously, true love did win out in the end. There is a happily ever after, but I was kind of worried there for a bit that it wasn't going to happen for them. The next prompt the TBR game gave me was Has a Prologue, and I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. This is kind of an adventure romance. We follow, I can't even remember her name now, Lily. And her father, Duke, is a well known treasure hunter, but he sort of takes off, leaves her with the ranch that he owns, and she can't afford to keep it running. So she's kind of has to go find this treasure that her father left like a map for and hopefully save her family's ranch. One of the people that she hires to come on the adventure with ends up being an ex of hers, and he kind of like ghosted her because he had like a death in the family, and he just had a lot of things going on, and he had to go back home. And honestly, there wasn't enough romance in this. I was expecting more, just because it was written by Christina Lauren, but this focused mainly on the adventure aspect and the group dynamics of this group that goes out treasure hunting. And it just didn't do it for me. I gave this one 3 stars. Uh, yeah, it was fine. I'm not mad that I read it, but it wasn't what I was expecting. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I went in with the wrong expectations, but I'm pretty sure this was marketed as a romance, so I just didn't get enough romance from it. The next book I got was an audiobook. I do actually have a physical copy, so I listened and read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I give this one 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. It wasn't quite as heartbreaking as I thought it was going to be. We follow Emma, and she marries her high school sweetheart. He is a production assistant for nature documentaries, and he goes on a trip. Their helicopter goes missing, and he's presumed dead. Most of the story is about her overcoming her grief of losing her husband. And finally, she's trying to get her life back on track. She moves back home by her family, runs into an old friend from high school, and they hit it off. They start establishing a life together. They get engaged. And then all of a sudden, her husband reappears. He had been stranded on an island, struggling to survive, and now he's back, and she has a very difficult choice to make. And her new boyfriend Sam is just so sweet through the whole thing. He really steps away and lets her make her own decision. He doesn't he understands that this is an impossible choice for her to make, and yeah, I really loved this one. So the next prompt in my TBR game was a booktuber fave, and for this I picked Claw by Katie Berry. This is a favorite of Jenny from the Haphazard Book Nook. In this, they come across this campsite where all the people were slaughtered, and it's basically them tracking down this creature to try to keep it from decimating all the local villages near this mountain. So this one was fun. I didn't get enough creature, and that seems to be my issue with a lot of these Bigfoot books is I don't get quite enough creature. So that's why it got a 4 star for me, but it was still really fun. And this is actually the first book in a series, so I'm going to have to check out the rest of them now. And the last prompt from the TBR game was ends in even page numbers. I read Hunting, well, I shouldn't say read, I listened to, because these audiobooks are chef's kiss. They are top tier audiobooks. But that was Haunting Beauty by Kayla Rain and Meg Ann. This is book 1 in the Mate Games Death series, and it was 374 pages. That was listed on Goodreads, so I'm counting that. This one I gave 4 stars as well. Unfortunately, this is so far my least favorite cast of characters from all of the different Mate Games series, because we also have Pestilence and War. I just didn't really connect with any of the guys, but it is a why choose reverse harem romance. They're kind of silly, goofy. Don't go into it expecting it to be super literary and the best thing ever written. This is just a fun, silly, goofy popcorn read. Again, the audiobooks are top tier. They're just so much fun and enjoyable to listen to. So overall, I still really liked it. This book followed Tor, who is kind of like a Thor type character. Not my favorite. We have seen Tor in all the other series as well. So I'm hoping as I get further into this series and we get some of the more of the other male characters' point of views, I will start enjoying it more. I think Tor is he's not my cup of tea, so it wasn't my favorite. I also read a couple arcs in September. The first one being Haunted Halls by W.A. Roberts. I was gifted this one by Horrorsmith Publishing. Honestly, I didn't even know I was one of their arc readers. I just got an email that was like, "Hey, ARC reader, it's time to read this." I remember signing up, but I never got like a confirmation that I was accepted to the ARC reader team. But whatever, doesn't matter. I read Haunted Halls. I absolutely loved it. I am not the biggest like eyeball reader. I mostly listen to audiobooks, especially like while I'm working, or just doing things around the house or working on my diamond painting. So the fact that I read this physically and read it within 2 days says a lot. I didn't want to put it down. I started it um, stupidly like right before bed one night, which is why it took me 2 days to read and not just one, because I probably would have just binged the whole thing. It is a haunted house story. There's lots of themes of grief and motherhood, alcoholism, but it's also very like brutal. The ghosts in the house actually attack, which is very unique. Like I feel like normally haunted house stories are just more creepy than anything, but this one actually had a lot of violent scenes. People were having to go to the hospital. People were getting like injured left and right. But this follows a mother, her child goes missing, and this house is known to like make children disappear. So it's the mother diving back into the history of the house and trying to figure out what is happening, where her son is, and how she can get him back. And this was just such an enjoyable time. Easy 5 stars for me. I absolutely love it. And so thank you to Horace Smith Publishing for giving me an e-art copy of this book. The next one I read was Fang Fiction. This was written by Kate Stamen. This is a rom-com. We follow a girl who is obsessed with a fantasy like vampire series, and she like follows all these podcasts, and there's all these conspiracy theories that the characters from these books are actually real. And our main character finds out maybe that's true, and she gets taken into their world. And it sounded like so much fun, but I unfortunately DNF'd this one 40% of the way in. There was too much in between the story because we kept getting like BuzzFeed articles and podcasts and like things like that in between every single chapter. And I couldn't stay in the story because it was broken up so much and it just wasn't working for me, unfortunately. It's not to say that it was bad, it just wasn't for me. So I DNF'd that one. Next, I have our Love and Horror Book Club pick book. That was Graves by Caitlin Taylor. This is another 3 star for me. Again, not mad I read it, but it's definitely not the best dark romance ever written. Again, we have another Why Choose. This one follows two brothers, and they are obviously obsessed with the same girl. Um, However, the one brother, Dominic, his character was so like lackluster. We just didn't get much personality from him. And then we have Zayden, the more like wild brother, and his character just didn't make sense to me. He like very contradictory of himself all the time. Like he's supposed to be this serial killer, but like he panics all the time in like stressful situations, and like that just doesn't make any kind of sense to me. Um so yeah, I don't know. It was fine. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. There is a lot of SA in here, and yeah, so make sure you check your triggers if you plan on reading this. It was fine, just not an all-time favorite. Now, I also joined the influencer team for Poppy Jacobson, and she sent me a e-copy of Diamonds in the Dark, which is her first book in the Savage Jewels series, another Why Choose dark mafia romance. And I had a lot of fun with this one. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't perfect, but I still really enjoyed it. The group of guys in here were all quite different. Liam was my favorite. I love me an Irish daddy. This is another one that is quite dark, so make sure you check your triggers if you're going into this. But I'm also excited to jump into the next book. I hope that I enjoy that one as well. The next one follows the main character in book one's sister. It is another Why Choose, but I believe her story is broken up into two books. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. There were quite a few other books that I read this month for nothing in particular, but just to read. The first one is Not in Love by Allie Hazelwood. I gave this one 3 stars. It is very different from any other Allie Hazelwood book. I have read all of hers so far. This one is definitely my least favorite. It's almost like dark romance, but it's still STEM. And I don't know that those two things go together. The first like 40% of this, I was just cringing so hard reading it. It was not great. The last like 60% definitely picked up and I enjoyed it a bit more, but I was close to DNFing. If it wasn't so short, I probably would have. So, yeah, 3 stars because by the end I wasn't mad I read it, but it's a little cringe to get into. I also read A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This is my beautiful, probably smut edition. It also has some like art inside. For being a fantasy romance, because I've not been in a fantasy romance mood lately, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. We follow a shield maiden, and it is all about gods and lore and uh, mythology. So it was a lot of fun. It was a very unique take. Um, it was a lot of like longing and kind of more of a slow burn, and I really enjoyed it. I also listened to Blood Like Mine by Stuart Neville. I unfortunately gave this one 2 stars. It was so boring, and honestly, I just had to stop and look up a synopsis. That's how unmemorable it was. Like I blanked completely. I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in it. So maybe 2 stars was a little generous. But we follow a mom and her daughter who are on the run from a grisly secret. So they never like put down any roots. They never make any friends. They don't really talk to people. And they just keep their life on the move. We also have an FBI agent who is hunting down a grisly serial killer who drains their victims of blood before severing their spinal cords? Cords. Their spinal cords. Words. um, and they're just kind of like leaving this trail of bodies all throughout the country. Uh, Come to find out that it has something to do with this mom and daughter, and well, I think you can kind of guess. It was kind of like this cat and mouse game, but it was just so boring and so unmemorable. It sounds like a really fun book, but I do not recommend it. So, moving on. I also listened to House. This is by Frank Piety and Ted Decker. I gave this one 4 stars. This is another kind of like haunted house-esque story. It's more of like a B&B inn that they end up at because of an accident or like an issue with their car. And things kind of take a wild turn. There is someone out to get them. All of a sudden, like rooms and walls and passages start changing. They're lost in here. They're seeing doubles of themselves. Everything is just very confusing. And the whole book, you're just kind of like, what is happening? So I had a lot of fun with this one. We actually buddy read it over in the Love and Horror Discord with a couple other friends and just kind of talked about it in Discord. And then I found out that it was also a movie. So we actually watched it last week in the Discord all together. And the movie was completely different than the book. It went off the rails. It was so weird. It didn't make any sense. The ending was completely different. Like not even in the realm of the same. There was like a weird ET like finger moment. I don't know what that was about. It was just awful. So recommend the book. Don't bother with the movie. It was bad. I also listened to Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This was my first book of hers, and I will definitely be reading some more. I gave this one 5 stars. I thought it was so well done. We follow a woman who is trapped on a mountain and she lives there with her husband, but she can't really remember her life before him. He is much older than her and very abusive and just kind of treats her like garbage. He's basically like just trying to use her to make a child, and she's not able to. And so she's trying to escape him, but also there is this monster, kind of like Bigfoot esque type thing, out in the woods, in the wilderness around them. They end up going to its cave, and now it's pissed off and out to get them. They run into another group of people out there exploring and trying to look into the lore of this monster, and they kind of are trying to save her because one of the guys recognizes her from way back when they were kids. So it's kind of her relearning about herself and also trying to escape this monster. And people are getting taken by it left and right. It was just a lot of fun. It was so eerie and creepy, and I loved the isolated setting. Because there was a lot of times where like it looked like there was no hope for them, and yeah, this one was a lot of fun. I also listened to Clown in a Cornfield 3 by Adam Cesar. I loved the first 2 books. However, this one I gave 3 stars. It was so weird and different than the rest. We kind of followed like 2 storylines here, and it was very like religious. And I don't know, it was like throw it in your face kind of religious in this one, where the other ones were more like political. And I just didn't really vibe with it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened in this one. It was just a totally different thing. It was still very brutal and gory, and I did enjoy the timeline following the main character that was in the other 2 books, but the other timeline that added the religious elements in this one, I did not care for, I did not care about, and I feel like we could have done without them. Now, those of you that know my reading taste know that I do not normally like novellas, but I did read Thrum by Megan Smitherman. This is a sci-fi horror romance. I gave it 4 stars, and that is very generous for me for a novella because they are not generally my cup of tea. But I think it did the like creepy sci-fi horror elements so well for being how short it was. The romance I don't think needed to be in it. It wasn't like a huge plot point, and honestly, it was just more cringy than anything. I think it could have been creepier had they not had the romance bits. But our main character ends up stranded out in space. She wakes up in her pod. Her whole crew is dead. She sends out a signal for help, and this other alien spacecraft comes to save her. She ends up boarding that spacecraft, and all of a sudden, hallways are changing and she can't find her way out, and she's seeing all of her dead crewmates on this ship. She's finding like their personal items on this ship, and she's just trying to figure out what is happening. So this was a fun, really quick read, and I highly recommend it. I also listened to All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I gave this one 4 stars as well. This one takes place on Halloween night in a small town in Massachusetts. We basically just follow the families on this one street. kids are out trick or treating. All of a sudden, these kids who no one knows who they are start showing up and asking these families for help to keep them safe from the cunning man. And no one knows what that's about. Also, there's a lot of like family dynamics and drama going down for a couple of the families. Everything is unraveling. Um, Families are being torn apart. And it was just really kind of fun, eerie. Um, a lot of drama in this one, though. So if that's not your thing, maybe skip it. But I quite enjoyed it. I loved the mix of like the supernatural with the like suburban drama thriller. I think they did it really well here, and I had a lot of fun with it. I also listened to the Ice Planet Honeymoon collection by Ruby Dixon. This is a collection of 4 novellas following the couples from the first 4 books. And it's just them going on their honeymoon. So we just get a little bit of extra sweet relationship things happening with each of these couples. Nothing like groundbreaking happens in any of these. It's just getting to see a little bit more of the couples establishing themselves together, and it was really cute and sweet. I gave it again a 3 star. As you know, I don't love novellas. We just talked about this. Um, but they were all fine. If you like novellas, they were probably great. I don't think we needed them, but they were cute. And then I continued on with the Ice Planet Barbarian series and read book 7, Barbarian's Touch. Our female main character in this one is actually deaf, and her barbarian mate really wants to learn how to speak her, he calls it hand language, her sign language. And so they go on a little adventure to try to get to a spacecraft to kind of download it into his memory. But obviously, there's a lot of issues with it, and he's kind of learning some sign language along the way. And just watching them try to communicate and form these bonds, even though it's so hard for them because she can't hear, is really cute and sweet and heartwarming. I absolutely loved this one. I gave this one 5 stars. Um, the I loved the first couple books, and then I felt like they started fizzling out for me. But book 7, this really revived the series for me, and now I am back into Ice Planet Barbarian Land, and I just can't wait to continue. I'm unfortunately at a space now where I have to read a few more of the novellas before continuing the next book, but that's all right. They are very short, so we'll get those knocked out and then continue on with the series. All right, so those were the 20 books that I read in the month of September. I'm so excited for spooky season next month for all of the horror reads. I already played my TBR game for next month. That was my video on Friday. I will make sure I link it down below if you didn't check that out, because I have a whole lot of fun plans for the month of October. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.